Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching the stars through the massive viewing screen. Just 3 months ago, those same stars had filled her with hope. Humanity had finally done it. They had broken the light barrier. They had built ships that could travel between star systems in days instead of centuries. Now those stars looked cold and empty. "Admiral, we're getting reports from the outer colonies," said Lieutenant Torres from his station. His voice was tight. "With worry, the signals are ... they're not good." Sarah nodded slowly. She had been expecting this news, but that did not make it any easier to hear. For 2 weeks, the alien ships had been moving through human space like a plague. They came without warning and left nothing behind. The first contact had happened. At Kepler Station, humanity's newest colony, Dr. Marcus Webb had been so excited when his deep space sensors picked up the incoming ships. After centuries of wondering if they were alone in the universe, humanity was finally going to meet their neighbors among the stars. The meeting had lasted exactly 17 minutes. The alien ships were beautiful in a terrible way. They moved like liquid metal through space, their hulls shifting and changing as they flew. When they spoke, their message was simple and clear. They called themselves the Hegemony. They had ruled the galaxy for over 50,000 years. Humanity was new. Humanity was dangerous. Humanity had to be stopped. "You spread too fast," the alien commander had said during that first contact. "You build too quickly. You ask too many questions. You do not know your place." Dr. Webb had tried to explain that humans were peaceful. They wanted to learn. They wanted to be friends. The alien commander had listened politely and then gave humanity their choice. Submit or die. When Dr. Webb asked for time to think about it, the aliens had shown them what submission meant. Kepler Station was turned to ash in less than an hour. That had been 3 weeks ago. Since then, 12 more colonies had gone silent. Each time, the pattern was the same. The alien ships would arrive. They would demand surrender. When the humans tried to negotiate or fight back, the colony would be destroyed. Sarah had been a military officer for 20 years. She had fought pirates and rebels and corporate raiders. But this was different. This was not a war between equals. This was extermination. "Ma'am, incoming transmission from Earth Command," Torres said. Sarah straightened her uniform. "Put it through." The face of General Harrison appeared on the main screen. He looked like he had aged 10 years in the past. Month. Behind him, Sarah could see the chaos of Earth's military headquarters. Officers were running back and forth with reports. Communication stations were flashing with urgent messages. "Admiral Chun," Harrison said. "What's the status of the evacuation?" "Fleets? We have gathered almost 2 billion people from the outer colonies," Sarah replied. "The ships are packed beyond safe capacity, but we're managing. The question is, where do we take them?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with defeat. "The Hegemony has given us their final ultimatum. All human presence beyond the Sol system must end within 72 hours. Any ships or stations found outside our home system after that deadline will be destroyed." Sarah felt her heart sink. "Sir, we need more time. There are still millions of people scattered across dozens of worlds. We can't evacuate everyone in 3 days." "I know," Harrison said. "But if we stay, they'll kill everyone anyway." "The Hegemony fleet is massive, Admiral. Our intelligence estimates put them at over 10,000 ships. Each one is more advanced than our best vessels. We can't fight them. We can't negotiate with them. All we can do is run." "Run where?" Sarah asked. "If we bring the evacuation fleets back to Sol, Earth will be overcrowded. The outer planets don't have the infrastructure to support this many people. And what's to stop the Hegemony from changing their minds and attacking us there too?" Harrison's expression grew even more grim. "We're not going back to Sol, Admiral. The Hegemony has made it clear that they see humans as a threat to galactic order. Even if we submit now, they'll find excuses to eliminate us later. So we're going to take the evacuation fleets and disappear." "Disappear to where?" "The void," Harrison said. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Every spacer knew about the void. It was the region at the very edge of the galaxy where space itself seemed wrong. Ships that went into the void sometimes came back with their crews dead or insane. More often, they never came back at all. No major civilization had ever established colonies there. It was considered a death sentence. Sir, the void is uncharted space. We don't know what's out there. We don't know if we can even survive there. We know we can't survive here, Harrison replied. At least in the void we have a chance. The hegemony won't follow us there. They're too smart to risk their own ships in that region. Sarah looked around her bridge. Her crew was listening to every word. These were good people. Professional officers who had devoted their lives to protecting humanity's expansion into space. Now they were being asked to lead their people into the unknown darkness at the edge of everything. What are our orders, sir? Gather all the evacuation fleets at the Omega relay station. We'll make our final jump from there. Pack everything you can. Food, water, manufacturing equipment, seed banks, cultural databases. We don't know how long we'll be gone or what we'll find out there. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. She walked to the edge of the bridge and looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, the hegemony ships were hunting down the last human colonies. Somewhere out there, her people were dying because they had dared to reach for the stars, ma'am, Torres said quietly. The crew is waiting for orders. Sarah took a deep breath and turned to face her bridge crew. These people trusted her. 2 billion refugees trusted her. They were depending on her to lead them safely into the unknown. Set course for Omega Station, she said, and send word to all ships in the evacuation fleet. Tell them we're going home. Home, ma'am? Torres asked, confused. Not the home we're leaving behind, Sarah said. The home we're going to build. Over the next 2 days, nearly 3,000 ships gathered at Omega Station. They were not warships. They were cargo haulers, passenger liners, mining vessels, and colony ships. Each one was packed with refugees who had lost everything, families who had watched their worlds burn, children who would never see the planets where they were born. The hegemony did not attack the evacuation fleets. They did not need to. As far as they were concerned, sending humans into the void was the same as killing them. It was just slower and less messy. On the final day, Sarah stood on her bridge and looked at the massive fleet stretched out before her. 2 billion people putting their faith in her decision to flee into the darkness. She thought about all the human colonies that had been destroyed, all the dreams that had been crushed, all the potential that had been lost. The hegemony thought they were sending humanity to die in the void. Maybe they were right. But Sarah had a feeling that they were wrong about humans. They always seemed to be wrong about humans. All ships. Report ready for jump, Torres announced. Then let's go, Sarah said. Take us into the void. The stars disappeared in a flash of light, and humanity began its journey into the darkness. 7 years had passed since the Great Evacuation, and Dr. Elena Vasquez felt like she was dying slowly. Not from disease or injury, but from the endless gray hopelessness that filled every day in the void. She floated in the cramped laboratory. Aboard the research vessel Newton, staring at readings that made no sense. The quantum fluctuations are getting worse, she said to her assistant, Dr. Park. Look at these numbers. The background radiation here doesn't follow any known physics. Park nodded tiredly. He had dark circles under his eyes, just like everyone else in the fleet. Sleep came hard in the void. People had strange dreams here. Some never woke up from them. Outside the ship's small window, the void stretched endlessly in all directions. It was not empty space like the areas between normal star systems. The void was filled with a dim, purple glow that seemed to come from nowhere. Sometimes Elena thought she could see shapes moving in that glow, but the sensors never detected anything. The human evacuation fleet had been drifting through this nightmare region for 7 long years. What had started as nearly 3,000 ships was now down to about 2,000. Some ships had suffered critical failures and had to be abandoned. Others had simply vanished during routine jumps between fleet positions. The people on those ships were gone, and no one knew where. Elena's communication device buzzed. It was Admiral Chen calling for the daily science briefing. Elena pushed herself through the ship's corridors, using handholds to navigate in the artificial gravity that never seemed to work quite right in the void. The Admiral looked older than her 60 years. The stress of keeping 2 billion people alive in hostile space had carved deep lines in her face. But her eyes were still sharp and determined. "What's our status today, Doctor?" Chan asked. "Not good," Elena replied honestly. "We're losing people. Every week, not just from accidents or ship failures. People are giving up. The psychological strain is breaking them down." Chun nodded grimly. She had seen the reports. Suicide rates were climbing. Depression was spreading through the fleet. Like a plague, families were falling apart under the stress. Children born in the void seemed different somehow, quieter and more withdrawn than normal kids. "What about supplies?" Chun asked. "We're rationing everything," Elena said. "Food, water, fuel, medical supplies?" "The recycling systems are working. Overtime, but they're not perfect. We lose a little bit of everything with each cycle. At current consumption rates, we have maybe 3 more years before we start dying of starvation." "And the manufacturing ships?" "They're doing what they can, but they need raw materials. We've been stripping non-essential equipment from abandoned vessels, but that's not a long-term solution." Chun was quiet for a moment, looking at the data on her screen. Elena knew what the Admiral was thinking. They had to find something soon, or the human race would die out here in the darkness. "Ma'am," came a voice from the bridge. "We're getting an urgent signal from Scout Ship Explorer." Chun activated the communication system. The face of Captain Rodriguez appeared on the screen. He looked excited for the first time in years. "Admiral, you need to see this," Rodriguez said. "We found something big." Elena felt her heart start beating faster. In 7 years of searching, the scout ships had found nothing but empty space and strange energy readings. Maybe their luck was finally changing. "What is it, Captain?" Chan asked. "It's better if I show you," Rodriguez said. "I'm transmitting. Coordinates now. You need to bring the science ships here immediately." 2 days later, Elena found herself aboard a small shuttle approaching the coordinates Rodriguez had sent. Even from a distance, she could see that something was different about this region of space. The purple glow was brighter here, and her instruments were going crazy with readings. Then she saw it, and her breath caught in her throat. It was a structure unlike anything humans had ever built. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers in all directions, a vast geometric shape that seemed to twist and bend in ways that hurt to look at. The surface was covered in patterns that shifted and changed as Elena watched. It was clearly artificial, but it was also clearly not human. "My God," Elena whispered. "What is that thing?" "We think it's some kind of space station," Rodriguez said over the communication system. "But it's old, really old. Our dating equipment suggests it's been here for millions of years." Elena's scientific mind was racing. "Are there any signs of life?" "None that we can detect. But there are energy readings coming from inside. Something is still working in there after all this time." Over the next week, Elena and her team conducted every scan they could think of. The structure was massive beyond imagination. It was not just a space station, but an entire complex of interconnected facilities. Manufacturing plants, research laboratories, living quarters, and things that Elena could not even begin to identify. The technology was far beyond anything humans understood. The materials used in construction were unknown to human science. The energy signatures suggested power sources that could run for millions of years without maintenance. "We need to get inside," Elena told Admiral Chun during their daily briefing. "Is it safe?" Chun asked. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "But Admiral, this could be our salvation. If we can understand even a fraction of this technology, we might be able to improve our ships, extend our supplies, maybe even find a way out of the void." Chun was silent for a long moment. Elena knew she was weighing the risks. If they sent people into the alien structure and something went wrong, The fleet could lose valuable personnel they could not afford to lose. But if they did nothing, they would all die anyway. Put together a small exploration team, Chun finally said. Volunteers only. And Elena, be very careful in there. Elena assembled a team of 12 specialists. Engineers, physicists, biologists, and computer experts. All volunteers who understood they might not come back. They spent 3 days preparing, checking their equipment over and over again. The entrance they found was clearly designed for beings much larger than humans. The doorway was 15 meters tall and covered in symbols that seemed to move when Elena was not looking directly at them. But when her team approached, the door simply opened, as if it had been waiting for them inside. The structure was even more amazing than Elena had imagined. Corridors stretched away in all directions, lit by a soft glow that came from the walls themselves. The air was breathable, though it tasted strange. Gravity worked normally, which was a relief after years of dealing with faulty artificial gravity. Systems. Look at this, called Dr. Martinez, the team's engineer. He was standing in front of a wall, covered in displays and controls. As Elena approached, the displays lit up with information written in symbols she could not read. It's responding. To us, Elena said in amazement. The systems are activating because we're here. They spent hours exploring the first level of the structure. Every room contained wonders that challenged their understanding of science and technology. Manufacturing devices that could create complex materials from basic elements. Computers that processed information at impossible speeds. Energy generators that tapped into forces Elena did not recognize, but the most important discovery came when Dr. Park found what appeared to be a database terminal. When he touched the interface, holographic images appeared in the air around them. Images of the beings who had built this place. They were tall and graceful, with elongated limbs and large eyes. They wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid light, but what struck Elena most was the sadness in their expressions. These beings had been running from something, just like humanity was now. I think I'm beginning to understand, Elena said to her team. This place, this entire complex. It's not just a space station. It's a refuge. These beings, whoever they were, they came to the void to hide, just like we did. As they explored deeper into the structure, Elena began to piece together the story. The beings who had built this place had once ruled a vast empire that spanned the galaxy, but something had driven them to the edge of space, forced them to abandon everything they had built. The most shocking discovery came when they found the construction facilities. Vast chambers filled with automated systems that could build spaceships, weapons, and technology beyond human imagination. Everything was still functional, waiting for someone to activate it. Elena, Dr. Martinez said quietly, do you realize what this means? Elena nodded slowly. She understood perfectly. They had found more than just a refuge. They had found the tools to transform humanity into something new. Something powerful enough to survive in the void, maybe even powerful enough to return to the galaxy someday. We need to get Admiral Chun down here immediately, Elena said. Everything is about to change. Marcus Webb stared at his reflection in the metal wall of the alien facility and barely recognized himself. His eyes had changed color from brown to a deep purple that seemed to glow in the dim light. His skin had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality. When he concentrated, he could feel the strange energy of the void, flowing through him like electricity through wire. 3 years had passed since Dr. Vasquez first discovered the ancient structure. 3 years of studying the technology left behind by the beings they now called the Void Builders. 3 years of slow, careful progress that was transforming humanity into something new. Marcus had been one of the first volunteers to work directly with the alien technology. He was an engineer by training, but the Void Builder systems required more than technical knowledge. They responded to thought, to intention, to something deeper than conscious understanding. The longer he worked with the machines, the more he changed. At first, the changes had been small: better reflexes, sharper eyesight, the ability to work for days without rest. But as time went on, the alterations became more dramatic. Marcus could now see energy patterns that were invisible to normal humans. He could interface directly with the alien computers using only his mind. Most disturbing of all, he could sense the thoughts and the emotions of other people around him. "Marcus, we need you in Construction Bay 7, came a voice over the communication system. It was Admiral Chun, though she sounded different now, harder, more distant. The years in the void had changed everyone, but those who worked closely with the alien technology changed the most. Marcus made his way through the corridors of the massive alien complex. The structure had become humanity's new home, nearly half. 1 million people now lived and worked inside its protective walls. The rest of the evacuation fleet remained in orbit around the facility, but more people were moving inside every month. Construction Bay 7 was a vast chamber filled with the most advanced manufacturing systems humanity had ever seen. The Void Builder machines could create anything from raw energy and basic matter. Food, clothing, medicine, computer chips, even living tissue. But their most impressive creations were the new ships. Marcus entered the bay and stopped in amazement. Floating in the center of the chamber was a vessel unlike any human ship ever built. It was sleek and organic-looking, its hull seeming to shift and flow like liquid metal. Energy patterns danced across its surface in colors that had no names. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said Dr. Vasquez, approaching from behind. She had changed even more than Marcus. Her hair had turned white, and strange symbols occasionally appeared on her skin, glowing faintly before fading away. "The first of the new fleet," Marcus nodded. "How does it work?" "That's what we're still figuring out," Elena replied. "The ship doesn't just move through space. It phases through it, slides between dimensions. The normal rules of physics don't apply to it." Admiral Chun joined them, and Marcus was shocked by how much she had changed. The Admiral's transformation was the most dramatic of all. Her entire appearance had shifted, becoming more angular and alien. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in Marcus's bones. "The first squadron is ready for testing," Chun said. "We need to know what these ships can do." Over the following weeks, Marcus and the other engineers put the new vessels through their trials. The results were beyond anything they had imagined. The ships could accelerate to impossible speeds without the crew feeling any force. They could become invisible to all known forms of detection. Most incredible of all, they could manipulate space itself, creating temporary wormholes that allowed instant travel across vast distances. But the ships required crews that had been changed by exposure to void technology. Normal humans could not interface with the alien systems. Only the Void Touched, as they had begun calling themselves, could pilot the new vessels. This created a problem that was tearing the human community apart. "We're becoming something inhuman," argued Captain Rodriguez during one of the heated council meetings. He was one of the few senior officers who had refused the transformation. "These changes, they're not natural. We're losing what makes us human." "What makes us human is our ability to adapt and survive," Chun replied coldly. "The old humanity was weak. The hegemony proved that when they drove us from our homes. If we want to return to the galaxy, we need to become stronger." The debate raged for months. On one side were those like Rodriguez who wanted to maintain human nature and find a way back to normal space using conventional technology. On the other side were the Void Touched, led by Chun, who believed that embracing the alien transformation was humanity's only path to survival and eventual victory. Marcus found himself caught in the middle. The changes frightened him, but he could not deny their power. When he worked with the Void Builder systems, he felt more capable than he had ever been as a normal human. His mind was faster, his understanding deeper, his abilities far beyond what any unmodified person could achieve. The split became official when Rodriguez led nearly half the evacuation fleet away from the alien structure. They established a separate colony on a dead planet deeper in the void, determined to survive using only human technology and ingenuity. "They'll die out there," Chun said as she watched the ships depart. "The void will consume them slowly, and they won't have the tools to fight back." Marcus was not so sure. He had seen what desperate humans could accomplish when their survival was at stake. But he also knew that Chun was probably right. The unmodified humans were trying to survive in a hostile environment using outdated technology. The odds were against them. Meanwhile, the Void Touched continued their work with the alien systems. The construction bays worked around the clock, producing new ships at an incredible rate. Within 2 years, they had built a fleet of over 5,000 vessels, each one more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen, but the ships were only part of the transformation. The Void Touched were developing abilities that went far beyond simple technology interface. Some could manipulate matter with their thoughts. Others could sense events happening light years away. A few had begun to show signs of precognition. Knowing things before they happened, Marcus discovered his own special ability by accident. He was working on a damaged ship when something went wrong with the power core. The explosion should have killed him instantly. Instead, he found himself standing outside the ship, watching the blast from a safe distance. Somehow, he had moved through solid matter to escape the danger. Phase shifting, Dr. Vasquez explained when he reported the incident. You've learned to exist partially outside normal space. It's one of the more advanced abilities. The transformations were accelerating. Each generation of Void Touch developed faster and more dramatically than the last. Children born in the alien facility were different from birth, showing abilities that took adults years to develop. They were smarter, stronger, and more adaptable than normal humans. But they were also more distant, more calculating, less emotional. Marcus watched these children and wondered what humanity was becoming. They were still recognizably human in basic appearance, but their minds worked differently. They thought in patterns that normal humans could not follow. They made decisions based on logic and efficiency rather than emotion or tradition. We're evolving, Chun explained during one of their planning sessions. The Void is forcing us to adapt or die. Those who can change will survive. Those who cannot will be left behind. The Admiral had changed the most of all. She rarely showed emotion anymore, and when she spoke, it was with the cold precision of a computer calculating probabilities. But her plans were brilliant. Under her guidance, the Void Touched had not only survived, but thrived in the hostile environment at the edge of space. The question that haunted Marcus was whether they were still human enough to care about the galaxy they had left behind. The hegemony had driven them into the void, expecting them to die. Instead, they had become something new and powerful. But with that power came a different way of thinking about the universe and their place in it. When do we return? Marcus asked. Chun one day as they watched the latest ships roll out of the construction bays, Chun's purple eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. When we are ready, she said. When we are strong enough to reshape the galaxy according to our will. The hegemony taught us a valuable lesson about the nature of power. We will not make their mistake of showing mercy to those who threaten us. Marcus nodded, but inside he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of space. The Void Touched were becoming something magnificent and terrible. They had the power to reclaim their place in the galaxy, but he wondered if the galaxy would survive their return. Commander Zara Kex of the Hegemony Defense Fleet was enjoying her morning meal when the first alarm started ringing. She set down her cup of bitter Talon tea and walked quickly to the command center of Orbital Station Nexus Prime, the most important military base in Hegemony space. Report, she ordered as she entered the bustling control room. Ma'am, we're getting strange readings from the Outer Rim, said Lieutenant Vell, one of her communications officers. Multiple sensor ghosts appearing and disappearing across 7 different sectors, Zara frowned. Sensor ghosts were common near the galactic edge where space was filled with cosmic dust and radiation, but 7 sectors at once was unusual. Probably just a solar storm from one of the unstable stars out there, she said. Have the patrol ships investigate when they get a chance? That was Zara's first mistake. 3 hours later, the Hegemony listening post at Kepler 7 went silent. Not destroyed, not damaged, just silent. One moment they were sending routine reports, the The next moment there was nothing but empty space, where the station used to be. "Send a patrol ship to investigate," Zara ordered. The patrol ship arrived at Kepler 7 and found nothing. No debris, no radiation signatures, no signs of battle. The massive space station had simply vanished, as if it had never existed. That was when Zara started to worry. Over the next week, 6 more military installations disappeared. Each time, the pattern was the same. Normal operations one moment, complete silence the next. The patrol ship sent to investigate found empty space and nothing else. The Hegemony High Command was not pleased. "How does an entire battle station just disappear?" demanded Admiral Threx during the emergency meeting. His 4 eyes glowed red with anger, and his scaled skin had turned the dark purple color that showed extreme stress in his species. "We don't know, sir," Zara replied honestly. "There are no weapon signatures, no energy readings, no signs of any known technology being used. Then what destroyed them?" "We're not sure they were destroyed, sir. They might have been moved or hidden somehow." Admiral Threx made a sound that was probably laughter in his species, but it sounded more like metal being torn apart. "Hidden? You're suggesting that someone has the technology to hide entire space stations from our sensors?" "The alternative is that someone has the technology to completely vaporize our facilities without leaving any trace," Zara pointed out, "which is worse." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke in a voice that was barely above a whisper. "The humans," he said. Everyone in the room turned to look at him. The humans had been driven into the void 25 years ago. Everyone knew they had died out there. Nothing could survive in that region of space for more than a few years. "Sir, the humans are extinct," said Captain Moores, the intelligence officer. "Our models show that they ran out of supplies within 10 years of entering the void. Even if some survived, they wouldn't have the technology to threaten us." "Then explain to me how 7 of our most secure military installations have vanished without a trace." Threx replied. "No one had an answer for that. The disappearances continued. Mining stations, research facilities, patrol bases, all gone without warning or explanation." The Hegemony began pulling their forces back from the outer rim, consolidating their defenses around the core worlds. That was exactly what the humans wanted them to do. Marcus Webb stood on the bridge of the ship called Shadow Dancer, watching the Hegemony fleet retreat through the quantum sensors that could see across vast distances. The Void Touched had been observing Hegemony space for months, learning their patrol patterns and defensive strategies. "They're scared," said Captain Reeves, the ship's commander. She had been one of the first to undergo the full transformation, and now her appearance was more alien than human. "Good. Fear makes people make mistakes," Marcus nodded. The strategy was working perfectly. By making the Hegemony installations simply disappear rather than destroying them in obvious battles, the humans were creating uncertainty and panic. The enemy did not know what they were fighting or how to defend against it. "Status report from the infiltration teams?" Marcus asked. "All objectives completed," Reeves replied. "We've placed monitoring devices in 17 major Hegemony systems. We can track their fleet movements in real time now. The new ships made these operations possible. The void-touched vessels could phase through normal space, becoming invisible and untouchable. They could appear inside heavily defended systems, complete their missions, and vanish again before the enemy even knew they were there. But the technology came at a price. The crews who operated these ships were changing even faster than the rest of the Void Touched. After months of phase, shifting, and dimensional travel, some of them were barely recognizable as human anymore. "Ma'am, incoming transmission." "From Fleet Command," announced the communications officer. Admiral Chun's face appeared on the main screen. After 25 years in the void, she looked more like an alien than a human. Her skin was pale gray, her eyes were solid black, and when she moved, it was with an inhuman grace that was both beautiful and disturbing. "Phase 2 is complete," Chun announced. "All outer rim defenses have been neutralized. The Hegemony is pulling back to defend their core worlds. It's time to move to Phase 3. Marcus felt a chill run through him. Phase 3 was the direct assault on hegemony military forces. No more stealth operations or psychological warfare. It was time for open battle. Are we ready for that level of conflict? Marcus asked. Chin's expression did not change. The Flea. Analysis shows a 97% probability of success. Hegemony technology is inferior to ours in every measurable way. Their tactics are predictable. Their responses are slow. They have grown weak during their long period of dominance. That was the way Chun talked now. Everything was statistics and probabilities. Emotions were inefficient. Mercy was illogical. The transformation had made her brilliant, but it had also made her cold. 3 days later, the real war began. The hegemony defense fleet was patrolling the Andromeda sector when the human ships appeared. One moment, the space around them was empty. The next moment, 500 vessels materialized out of nowhere, their hulls gleaming with energy that seemed to bend light around them. Commander Zara was on the flagship when the attack began. She had seconds to react before the human weapons opened fire, but they were not weapons in any sense she understood. The human ships did not shoot missiles or energy beams. Instead, they reached out with invisible forces that simply unmade whatever they touched. Hegemony ships dissolved into their component atoms. Others were teleported into nearby stars. Some were frozen in time, their crews trapped forever in a single moment. Return fire! Zara screamed into her communication system. The hegemony ships responded with everything they had. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, gravity weapons, all the most advanced technology in the galaxy. The weapons struck the human ships directly and had no effect at all. The energy just passed through the enemy vessels as if they were not really there. Within 20 minutes, the entire hegemony fleet was gone. Some ships destroyed, others captured, many simply made to disappear. Zara found herself floating in an escape pod. Watching human ships move through the debris field like sharks through blood, one of the human vessels approached her pod. Zara prepared to die, but instead of destroying her, the ship simply scanned her with some kind of energy beam. Then it moved away, leaving her alive but helpless. She was not the only survivor. The humans had left exactly one escape pod from each destroyed ship, just enough people to tell the story of what had happened. It was a message to the hegemony, a demonstration of power that was both merciful and terrifying. The survivors made it back to hegemony space with their reports, and panic spread through the government like wildfire. The humans were back, and they were no longer the weak species that had been driven from the galaxy. They had become something new, something powerful, something that could destroy the hegemony without breaking a sweat. Emergency sessions were called. Defense plans were drawn up and immediately discarded as useless. How do you fight an enemy that can appear anywhere, ignore your weapons, and make your ships disappear? The answer, as several wise hegemony leaders realized, was that you don't fight them. You surrender and hope they are feeling generous, but after 25 years in the void, mercy was not something the humans had much interest in showing. The war lasted 18 months, but everyone knew it was over after the first 6. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years through superior technology and military might. Now they found themselves helpless against an enemy that seemed to exist outside the normal rules of reality. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in what had once been the Hegemony Supreme Council chamber on the capital world of Nexus Prime. The room was vast and circular, designed to accommodate the representatives of 12 different alien species. Now it served as the headquarters for humanity's new galactic government. Elena had changed more than anyone during the war years. Her transformation was so complete that she barely remembered what it felt like to be fully human. Her consciousness existed partially outside normal spacetime, allowing her to perceive events across the galaxy simultaneously. She could see the surrender ceremonies happening on dozens of worlds, the hegemony fleets laying down their weapons, the fear and confusion of billions of alien civilians. The Altair Confederation has agreed to our terms, reported Commander Nash, one of the void-touched officers who served as Elena's liaison with the military forces. Their entire fleet is being decommissioned as we speak. Elena nodded without taking her attention away from the holographic displays that showed the current state of galactic affairs. The surrender was proceeding faster than their most optimistic projections had predicted. Most of the former hegemony species were choosing integration rather than isolation. "What about the Kithra worlds?" Elena asked, still refusing all contact. Nash replied, "They've sealed their borders and are threatening to destroy their own planets rather than submit to human rule." "Let them," Elena said without emotion. "They will change their minds when they see how the other species prosper under our guidance." That was the new human way of thinking: practical, efficient, emotional attachment to outdated concepts like mercy or fairness was seen as a weakness that the old humanity could not afford. The void had taught them that survival required strength, and strength required the willingness to make hard choices. The transformation of galactic civilization was happening with startling speed. Human ships appeared in every system, not as conquerors but as administrators. They brought new technology, new forms of government, new ways of organizing society. Species that had stagnated under hegemony rule for millennia suddenly found themselves advancing at incredible rates on the industrial world of Gamma Centauri. Human engineers worked alongside local technicians to build new manufacturing facilities using void builder technology. In 6 months, they increased the planet's production capacity by 3,000%. The local population went from barely surviving to enjoying a standard of living they had never imagined possible. Similar transformations were happening everywhere. Agricultural worlds that had struggled to feed their populations were now producing massive surpluses. Mining operations that had been depleting their resources for centuries discovered new extraction methods that were both more efficient and less harmful to the environment, but the changes came with conditions. All new technology required human oversight. All major decisions had to be approved by human administrators. Any sign of resistance or non-compliance resulted in immediate intervention by the void. Touched military forces, Marcus Webb found himself appointed as the regional administrator for the former hegemony core worlds. It was a position of enormous responsibility, overseeing the lives of nearly 50 billion beings across 200 star systems. The old Marcus would have been overwhelmed by such a task. The new Marcus handled it with the cold efficiency that came with his transformation. He stood in his office aboard the orbital command station above Nexus Prime, reviewing reports from across his region. Food distribution was optimal. Industrial production was exceeding targets. Crime rates had dropped to nearly zero. By every measurable standard, the transition to human rule was a complete success. "Sir, we have a request for audience from the former Hegemony Council," announced his assistant, a young void-touched woman named Sarah Chun, who was the Admiral's granddaughter. "They want to discuss the terms of the surrender agreement?" Marcus considered this for a moment. The former council members had been allowed to live in comfortable exile on a small moon, stripped of all power but given adequate resources for survival. They had not requested a meeting in over 6 months. "Schedule it for tomorrow," Marcus decided, "but limit it to one representative." The next day, Marcus met with former Admiral Threx in a small conference room. The once proud military leader looked old and broken. His scales had lost their luster, and his 4 eyes were dim with defeat. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," Threx said in the universal trade language that most species used for communication. "What do you want?" Marcus asked directly. "Pleasantries were inefficient. I want to understand," Threx replied. "Your species was weak when we drove you away. Primitive, emotional. How did you become this?" Marcus studied the alien for a moment. There was genuine curiosity in the question, not just defeated resignation. "We adapted," Marcus said simply. "The void forced us to evolve or die. We chose evolution." "But you've lost something in the process," Threx continued. "I've been watching your people. You're efficient, yes. Powerful, certainly. But you're not the same species that left this galaxy 25 years ago. We're better," Marcus replied. You?" Threx leaned forward. Your old people used to show mercy to defeated enemies. They valued individual freedom. They celebrated diversity and creativity. I see none of that in your new civilization." Marcus felt a flicker of something that might have been the old human emotion called anger, but it passed quickly. The old humanity was driven from their homes by superior force. The new humanity rules the galaxy. Which version was more successful? Threx was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was sad. "You've become us," he said. "The same arrogance. The same certainty that might makes right. The same inability to see any value in weakness or difference. Is that why you requested this meeting? To insult us?" "No," Threx said. "I requested this meeting to warn you. The hegemony ruled for 50,000 years because we were strong and united. But strength and unity can become weaknesses if you're not careful. When you only value power, you stop growing. You stop learning, you become stagnant." Marcus considered this. "What are you suggesting?" "Some of the species you've conquered have things to offer beyond just obedience. The Altair are natural artists and philosophers. The Kithra are master scientists. The Veltar are skilled diplomats. If you only see them as subjects to be controlled, you'll miss opportunities to become even stronger." After the meeting, Marcus found himself thinking about Threx's words. It was true that human policy had focused primarily on maintaining order and extracting resources from the conquered territories. But perhaps there was wisdom in allowing some diversity within the new galactic order. He brought the idea to Elena during their weekly planning session. "Interesting," Elena said after hearing his proposal. "You're suggesting we allow limited autonomy to species that demonstrate useful capabilities?" "It would increase overall efficiency," Marcus explained, "and it might reduce the risk of rebellion." Elena's transformed mind processed thousands of variables in seconds. "The probability models support your conclusion. Species that feel valued are 17% more productive than those who feel oppressed. Implement the changes on a trial basis. Within months, the new policies were showing results." The Altair Confederation was given permission to establish cultural centers throughout human space. Their art and music spread rapidly, creating new forms of entertainment that even the void touched found appealing. The Veltar were allowed to serve as intermediaries between humans and species that were still adjusting to the new order. Most importantly, the changes helped address a problem that the human leadership had been quietly worried about. The void touched were incredibly capable, but their transformation had cost them something essential. They were losing the ability to innovate, to think creatively, to see possibilities beyond pure logic and efficiency. By incorporating other species into their civilization, the humans gained access to different ways of thinking and problem-solving. The galaxy became not just a collection of conquered territories, but a genuine community of different peoples working toward common goals. 5 years after the end of the war, Marcus stood once again in the Supreme Council chamber. But now the seats were filled with representatives from dozens of different species, all working together under human guidance to build something new. The galaxy had entered a new age. Humanity had returned from the void not just as conquerors, but as the guardians of a civilization that was more diverse, more dynamic, and more powerful than anything that had come before. In the deep void, the ancient construction facilities continued their work, building new ships and technologies for challenges that had not yet revealed themselves. The humans had learned that the universe was vast and full of dangers. They would be ready for whatever came next. The species that had once been forced to flee had become the protectors of galactic civilization, and in the darkness between the stars they continued to grow stronger.